Almost every ROG Ally review that's come out over the past couple of weeks has been flawed. And it's not through any fault of the creators or the publications. It was ASUS, because they sent out review units that just were not ready to be reviewed. These things were running drivers and firmware that were so underbaked. And when I started my review on this thing, I almost did it, right? I went through the process and I was like, something's wrong. Like, these numbers aren't where they should be. So I contacted ASUS and I was like, this doesn't add up, man. These things should be doing better. And they said, just wait, there's firmwares and drivers coming out. And so I did. So over the past couple of weeks, I was sent a bunch of updates, but the one I got a couple days ago just hit different, because now this product is like 15 or 20% better than it was on day one. So let's take a look at some numbers. If you look at this graph here, the yellow bars represent the data that it collected from the ROG Ally on day one, like running the original firmware. And you can see it's a decent performer if you compare it to the Steam Deck. For the most part, it's better, but not by a lot. And the weird thing, the thing that like threw all the red flags for me, was I also had access to this product, the Neo 2S. And the chip that's in here, the 7840U, is very similar to the chip that's in the Ally, the Z1 Extreme. But you can tell, right? Those yellow bars are quite different from the red bar. In a lot of games, it's just like outperforming the Ally by a significant margin. So that's when I was like, it doesn't make sense, right? This shouldn't be underperforming like this. But the new firmware, check this out. This is so much better, like right across the board. Now, this was the 15 watt profile, the performance mode, kind of middle ground. There was a higher wattage profile called the turbo mode that's 25 watts. And if you look at the chart here, it's the same thing. This new firmware, like it's represented by the green there, it's just a better performer. And the thing is, you'd only be able to get these frame rates on the latest driver. It just feels so unfortunate that ASUS sent out all these review units to so many reviewers, and it seems like all of that work that those reviewers did and the publications did, it's almost worthless now because of this change. Like, I feel like ASUS really should have dropped this stuff from day one. Now, if you look at the last profile here, this is the 9 watt profile. So this is they call it the silent mode. So on day one, the ROG Ally was a comically underperforming device. It was actually concerning to a lot of people that it was underperforming worse than a Steam Deck. You can tell though that the new firmware, it's better, but it still pales in comparison to what the Steam Deck can do at 9 watts. And I think there's a reason for it. So the first thing I want to just push into your minds is that I don't think this is going to get much better. I actually think that the 9 watt, or like the low wattage performance that you're seeing right now, is pretty much as good as it's going to get on the ROG Ally. And the reason for it is simply because the chip that's in here was derived from a laptop. Like the 7840U, that's the thing inside here, very similar to the Z1 Extreme that's in here. It's a chip that was designed to run from like 15 to 30 watts. And all the optimizations and validation and tweaking that was done for it by the AMD engineers is built for that wattage range. It's awesome, but the moment you stick it into a handheld device that can kind of make use of ultra low wattage, you lose a lot of power efficiency, which differs drastically from what the Steam Deck was. This is running a custom chip that was designed to run from 3 to 15 watts. So it's covering that low range, right? So when you go to 9 watts, it's like smack dab in the middle, it's built for it. So this is Spider-Man, it's running at 33, 34 frames per second at full wattage, but you can drop it down to 3 watts. 3 watts. It runs terribly. It's now at 6 frames per second. This is unplayable at this point. My lord. But it can go that low. Now, you obviously don't drop your TDP to 3 watts to be able to play Spider-Man at 6 frames per second. You're doing it so you can play the undemanding titles at high frame rates while still having crazy long battery life. So this is Nomad Survival. You can get 60 frames per second at 3 watts. The Ally can't do that. Okay, so I want to move this conversation on to just a couple of thoughts that I've had about the ROG Ally. First is the wattage consumption. So this pulls, like I mentioned, 25 watts at the top end if you're running it on battery. The Steam Deck pulls 15 at the top end, and because of that, battery life can be quite different. So if you have both of these systems running at 15 watts each, they're actually fairly similar, but you can really milk the battery life on the Steam Deck if you're playing some very undemanding games. A couple things I want to mention about the battery on the ROG Ally. So first, the fast charging is awesome. So you can fill this thing up to like 70, 80% battery in like 35, 40 minutes. It's very fast, way faster than the charging on the Steam Deck. But the other thing I thought was kind of neat is that you can set the maximum charge limit on the device to 80%. And the purpose of it is to extend the longevity or like the whole like battery health of the product so that, years later, this thing will just have better battery health because it wasn't going to full charge each time. And yeah, it's a neat feature that I think every handheld should have, and ASUS, being ASUS, has it. Now, the screen. So this, it's an awesome screen. It goes up to 1080p, 120 hertz, but if you'll notice, most of the benchmarking that I did was at 720p, and it's because most of the AAA titles out there will never be able to take advantage of 1080p, let alone 1080p at 120 hertz. So you're often just playing either indie titles, like 2D games, if you want to see 120 frames per second. Most AAA games will be running at 60 to maybe 90 frames per second. Now, I want to move this conversation over to what I would argue is one of the most important elements of this product, the software and the support, but first, software. So this is running Windows 11, and it's got a piece of software from ASUS called Armory Crate that is supposed to give it a more intuitive experience for the gamer. And it does an okay job. It's a lot better now than it was on day one, but it can still be awful at times because it's Windows. A real simple example, Street Fighter 6. It's a game that's not validated. It's like a demo right now, but it's not validated for the Steam Deck. But I installed it on here, and literally I download it, and within 2 clicks, I'm playing. I'm in the game. Everything works exactly the way that it should. Now on this device, I download it on Steam, and I boot it up. It has issues with VSync. I have to change the resolution, I have to change graphical settings, I have to adjust the controls, I have to go through so much stuff. I got to jump through hoops to be able to get this thing running. Now, I'm someone who's very comfortable on Windows, but there's something about the experience, and I was like, after 7 minutes, I was in, and it was a great game experience. But when I was setting it up, I thought to myself, this is crazy. Like, if I gave this product to an 8-year-old kid, like my son, he would never have been able to figure that out. Like, even if I had Steam installed and the game would be like, yo, get Street Fighter 6, he would have given up after 20 minutes and like, it doesn't run, Dad. It doesn't work on this thing. But on the Steam Deck, he would have instantly, he'd be in the game, he would have figured it out. And there's something about this that is difficult to convey as a reviewer because everyone's kind of view on this is different, right? For some people, the burden of Windows is too much to handle, and I get it. But I have to remind you that the reason why we buy these systems, the reason why we use a handheld gaming device is not to navigate through the UI and to buy games and to look for stuff. It's really to play games. And the in-game experience, like once you're in games, it's awesome. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a better gaming experience than the Steam Deck for the vast majority of games. But if you're not comfortable with that stuff and you just want to avoid it at all costs, like if you're a Mac user and you're not familiar with Windows, you're gonna hate the Ally. I think that all those pop-ups and all the Windows stuff kills it. And the fact that, a lot of it is Windows, but the fact that there's like Microsoft Office installed on this thing, why? ASUS, get rid of it, man. This is a gaming device. People are not gonna be using Office on this thing. It should be clean. Same with McAfee. Get that out of here, man. Okay, last thing, the support. And I don't mean just like the support from the company. Valve obviously supports this product very well, both in terms of like customer service, repairability, and like all that stuff. This is a very well supported product. But the thing that comes to mind is that this product here, Steam Deck, this is a product that's meant to last several years. Like they're not coming out with the Steam Deck 2 anytime soon. They've gone on record with that, right? And so for all the companies that support this thing with like mods and accessories, it makes sense to just, right? You have a product that's gonna last several years. The support and the community around it is massive, and it will stay massive because that's Valve, okay? This is a product, as awesome as it is made by a company that's really good at selling hardware and ideally selling you hardware frequently, right? ASUS wants people to buy these things and so they can make money from it. But if they have a new version of this product, if the Ally 2 comes out, I don't know, a year or 2 years from now, I fear that this thing will just be shelved by ASUS in terms of the support. And it doesn't deserve that. This is such an awesome product. And I feel like ASUS, if you watch this video, you have to support this thing. You've shown awesome support for it so far. Great communication with the audience. And just like, you guys are really supporting this at launch. But I think if you can keep that up over time, this will be an amazing device that will just literally be better than any other Windows handheld on the market. Better than this stuff, as long as you keep the support up. Okay, there you have it. The ROG Ally.